Hello. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am doing a reading vlog today, and I did already start this book, so you're gonna have to forgive that. I am currently reading through the Starlit Prince by C.F.E. Black, and it's, I think, part of the series Secrets of the Fae, or In the World Secrets of the Fae, because it did say it was a standalone, and I am reading this on Kindle Unlimited, because right now there is I think it's just free for anyone who has a Kindle right now. Oh, and I can take this off. I don't need this on. Not listening to the feedback. This book is really interesting. And confusing. Really confusing. It's in two perspectives, so it's two POVs, which I personally prefer. I want the male and the female POV any chance I can get. The problem is that I'm pretty sure that the man, this is a spoilers, by the way. I'm just gonna jump right into this reading vlog. I'm gonna tell you where I'm at in the book, and then we'll kind of go from there. This man, I think, has two names, and it has really confused me. It has caused me great confusion. In fact, I had to go back and reread the chapters. Okay, yeah, I'm only 8% into the book, and I've already had to reread 3 of the chapters. The chapter directly before Raphael's first POV. The problem also with that is I'm pretty sure that she knows him as Romeo or Romero. Yeah, chapter 3 I had to reread, and then chapter 4 is Raphael's first POV, but I'm also really certain that he also goes by, let me see this, Romero. Yeah, okay, so okay. The plot of this book seems to be, from what I've been able to gather, okay, so in chapter 1, she's like at a ball, she's dressed in red, her best friend is also dressed in red, and they're at this dance, and they're kind of like helping each other confuse the men who want to dance with them, acting like, oh no, you meant that person, or oh, you meant this person. And so they're trying to like confuse the men there, and then they kind of sneak out and go to the barn to go and look at the horse, because there is a horse race. At first I thought it said in 5 hours, then it said 5 days later in the book it would be in 5 days. So I'm confused presently, because we're at the start of chapter 4, but like I said, I had to reread 3 and 4, like the start of 4, multiple times because I was just confused. And so they get to the barn, but then oops, the horse has been stolen. So like the prized horse that her family has, like all of these bets have been placed on this horse, I guess. And now that it's been stolen, they're gonna have to like pay out all of those bets, which they won't be able to do. And also they're already in a lot of debt to their landlord, who I think his name is Ortiz or Ortez. It's kind of insinuated that they're gonna have, like, that her father will have to sell her to their landlord in order to like recover all this debt that they're gonna be in. But it's also just really confusing. The book is short. I picked this book because it was short, and I just wanted to try something. I'm like kind of in a lull right now with trying to find something to read, and this book is only a little over 200 pages long, so I'm gonna read this whole book today and then like update you as I go. I am so confused. I am perplexed. Chapter 2 is both of the girls getting on a horse and riding to the town Puerta, which is a degenerate town full of seedy underbelly crime stuff. And so they have to also disguise themselves, which they do by just pulling their hood over their head. And they describe it as it being so crowded that it's so hard to ride their horses. But then later they're like sprinting on their horses as though it's not completely crowded and they won't just be killing and trampling people. They also both had to like pull a slit up their dress in order to like add knives to their like legs, because it's the only place they could keep it, and they keep having to like try to pull their dresses closed. So they're riding through in chapter 2, and they almost get to Puerta, and then all of a sudden the Wild Hunt is there, which I only know about from The Witcher, and I don't think that it's the same Wild Hunt. All of a sudden the Wild Hunt is coming, and it's just 2 dudes who are wild hunting. Everyone starts to run towards Puerta, and we get a little bit of backstory that the Wild Hunt like to kidnap virgins and take them away. So they're running. I assume probably because they're virgins. I think that's what it was insinuating, because they were after them. They grab a woman and then run away, and then the 2 girls make it into Puerta. That's when they're like walking through it, but everyone keeps like eyeing them, like definitely wanting to purchase them. in multiple ways is what the book is saying, not me. That's what the book is saying. They decide to dismount their horses to better hide amongst the crowd. And they're there in Puerto looking for whoever stole this horse because they're probably going to be selling it here. So that's where we meet Romero / Raphael, I'm pretty sure, because he is like the horse breeder, this like incredible horse breeder, and where the horse would have been sold to if they were going to find it in Puerto. They try to get in and they're like, you need an appointment. And then when the previous appointment walks out, Zara's the best friend. I see, it's so confusing. Zara's the best friend. Talia is the main character, and Romeo / Raphael is the main male character. It's so confusing. Who is it? I can't remember. One of them grabs the other and they like burst into the tent. Oh, also a very important point to mention is that Talia she doesn't believe in magic and doesn't think that any of these things are real, which is really confusing because within the first 3 chapters, she experiences the wild hunt and multiple different forms of magic, but then she has the nerve to turn to Zara and be like, well, it doesn't even matter because magic's not real. And it's like, you just saw the wild hunt and you're gonna say like, oh, magic's not, like, it's just the book feels very rushed. Like, the world building is confusing. Zara takes magic very seriously. She's like, magic's not something to joke about. And Talia's like, well, magic's not even real. And it's like, you just saw the wild hunt. Anyways, Zara grabbed Talia's arm and pulled her into the tent. Okay. And it's not just like a pitch tent. It is like a massive, picture like multiple like cloth doors. It's a huge tent, like a cathedral of a tent. Okay. And they go in, and then this is very important, Talia knocks over a vase of lilies, and it shatters and goes everywhere, and she was able to catch the table from falling over, but the lilies go everywhere. And then they like slowly kind of look up and see that they're sitting like kind of in the throne room of this horse breeder, his place. I looked up aghast, hands moving slowly away from the intricately carved table. 3 chandeliers lit the spacious room, and a tall chair with twisting wood armrests sat before a wide desk in the center of the far wall. A man sat there, tall, riding boots propped up on the ornate desk, dark brows lifted in mild surprise. His jet black hair peeled away from a tanned face with a particularly square jaw that stole my attention for the briefest moment. The guard stepped in and gripped my upper arm so tightly that I yelped. Then the guy, he waves his fingers at the guard and tells him to go away. And he goes, may I help you? And she says that she stares at the man in this shining dark suit, the picture of wealth and far handsomer than I imagined any of the dealers in Puerto. He goes, are you here to help with our fly problem or just destroy my lilies? They kind of just like balk for a second. They're just like kind of, ooh. Talia goes, Senor Romero. Okay, so we know this is Romero, right? But then they try to buy the horse back, and he's like, I already sold your horse. Your horse is gone. I already sold it. And she's like, who'd you sell it to? Who sold it to you? And he's like, oh, I can't tell you who I sold it to or who I bought it from. So they eventually leave, but not before a blonde-haired guy walks in, who I thought was Raphael, because we're talking to a guy named Romero, who is clearly not Raphael. But then we learn that the blonde guy's name, I'm not even sure, is Hector. The girls leave, and then we get to Raphael's first POV chapter. And the setup for going into this chapter is the girls have left, and the lilies are all over the floor. There's a blonde guy standing next to Romero, who is sitting in the chair, who has black hair, and he is tan. And then we switch into his POV. So we're in Raphael's POV. Startled. It starts with startled. I turned at the place where the 2 mortals just disappeared. I should catch her. Hector turned toward me, his eyes wide. Raphael. So it's like, who is Raphael then? I shook my head and paced away from him, a feral growl tearing from my throat. I don't even know what that's supposed to sound like. Hector's like, you need to go after her. You have to get her. Raphael is like, I don't know. She didn't take the flowers. She just broke the vase of the flowers. And so what we're kind of getting at here is Raphael has been cursed, and the only way for him to get free of his curse is to have a mortal woman fall in love with him, and then he kills her. So that's the only thing that can break the curse. So he has to find a mortal woman who he can get to fall in love with him, and then he murders her. And that's like what we think is the situation. We don't know for sure, but that's what we think is the situation so far in this book. So Hector, I think, is the blonde guy. I don't have any confirmation that this is true yet. Hector's like, you need to go, it's now or never, we only have a week. So the stress is on. There's only a week before his curse is locked in forever. He's got a week to do this. Raphael leaves and immediately goes after the women. He's like following them through the streets, and eventually they get cornered by Ortiz, who is the landlord, and he recognizes them, and he's like, you're coming with me, women, ladies. And it seems very, very gross. Like, it doesn't seem like he has good intentions. Like, I'll just say that, right? I only realized that maybe that this is the dark-haired guy, because in my head I thought the blonde-haired guy must be Raphael because Romeo has the dark hair, but then the blonde-haired guy calls Romero Raphael. Anyways, so I'm reading through this thinking that it's the blonde guy, but then when we get to chapter 5, which is where I stopped, she's like, I looked up at the dark-haired man, and I'm like, wait, this is Romero. And then I was like, wait, is Romero Raphael? And then that's where I had to stop reading because my child woke up. Confusing. And so essentially Ortiz is like cornering her, and he's like, I'm gonna buy you, you're gonna be my wife, you're gonna marry me, blah blah blah, but like just all the classic like evil villain forcing a woman to marry him. This gorgeous tanned black-haired fae man shows up. He's tall, of course, and he's like, if you strike a bargain with me, I'll save you from this man. And she looks at him, and then she looks at Ortiz, and he like lunges for her and tries to grab at her, and then she gets really scared and she goes, I'll do it, like I'll strike the bargain. He like moves in, and he's like, yo, I'm taking her, she's coming with me. And then again, this is like where I stopped. So she realizes, and when we get into her POV, that she has no idea what kind of bargain she's just struck. She's unaware that she has to marry him. The line I literally stopped at was him saying, in order to complete the bargain with me, you have to marry me. Like, she's not so pressed about it because he's handsome. She's like, well, at least like it could be worse, like at least he's handsome. I don't know where we're at, okay? So there's very interesting world building that's going on where it's like the chair with the twisted armrest at the back of the middle wall. Like, that's very specific, right? We know that he's in the center of the room at the back wall sitting on this like throne thing. But sometimes I just feel like the characters will teleport around. There's very specific things that are described, but then other times it's like you're just kind of crossing time and space in reality, it feels like, and it's really hard to keep up with what the characters mean or what they're saying. It also, I don't believe that there's no way Talia could have ever been introduced to magic, like, unless she was just kept in a locked room forever, which she definitely wasn't. She knows how to fight, she has daggers, she rides horses, like, she's incredibly well versed. There's no way that she's just never ran into magical beings before. I don't buy it. I don't believe it. That's how I feel. Chapters are also super short. I just realized that actually instead of finishing at chapter 5, it's actually chapter 6 is where I stopped. She knows he's fae now, so that's cool. I love the fae. I just want to say this. I love the fae. She also thinks he can't lie to her, which every single book I've started where it's like, oh, the fae can't lie, we actually find out later that they can. So I am not convinced that he can't lie yet. But yeah, that's where we're at. I'm gonna read more of this and then check back in with you again later. But I'm gonna be finishing this today, and it's a really short book and I'm really confused. I feel like it's really rushed, but maybe I'll feel differently at the end. Like, I'm not even like a fast reader, if that makes sense. Like, I'm not ignoring details. Like, I'm the kind of person that when I get a character description, I don't miss the eye color or the hair color. Like, I am really good at keeping track of all of the book's details. And so that's why when things like this happen and it's like, okay, we think Raphael is also Romero, which feels like a interesting trope. It feels like in other books where one character for that entire book, you think that they're this good guy under this name, and then you get to the end of the first book and actually that's the evil person who she's fallen in love with, and he has this other name entirely who you've heard this entire book but you didn't know that they were the same person, right? It feels like this book did what those books do in an entire 700 pages in 8% of the book. Anyways, I'm gonna read more of this and then let you know if Hector is actually the blonde fae guy and if Raphael is actually Romero, because I think that they are. I don't know why they would be calling Raphael Romero. Oh, and another note is that Raphael's brother hates him. He's the one who cursed him. His brother and an enchantress cursed him. Okay, I'll catch up with you. Okay, you can kind of see my son in the background. I am here to give you an update on my book. I'm on page 89. We're on chapter 15. Things are getting a little interesting. I have discovered that the blonde-haired fae is Hector. I have also discovered that Raphael's first name is Raphael and his last name is Romero. So he's Raphael Romero. So it was the same guy. It was just really confusing. The beginning of the book is just kind of like a whirlwind. It feels like it's like rushing to give you all of the exposition so it can just get to the actual story part. But, oh, also you can see my son being rocked right there. I was trying to feed him while I was like pumping, while I was reading, and it was just like too much, and then the pumping didn't work, so we had to do formula, which is fine, but you know, I've been having issues with that kind of thing. So what's happened is they did their quick little marriage, because all that needs to happen for a fae to be married is for them to just literally say their vows anywhere, as long as there's a third party fae that's there to witness it. So Hector and Raphael are there, and her dad is not happy. He's like, oh my gosh, why would you ever put my reputation above your reputation? And she's like, because I love you, because my life would be pointless if I had to marry Ortiz, which is like the only other option. So they go through with the marriage ceremony. Dad throws in this little thing. So Raphael says that they have to say the fae marriage vows. Her dad is like, no, you're gonna have to also say our vows, like the human vows. And he's like, then it won't be void. And then the dad's like, well, then you can't take her. And then Raphael is like, well, then she'll die. So it's a whole thing, but eventually he agrees. And here's the twist. So at this point, we do have confirmation that there's a curse on Raphael. In order for it to be broken, he has to convince a woman to marry him, a human woman to marry him. And then after falling in love with him, she will die. We don't know how yet at this point in the chapter. He's like trying to marry her quickly. We don't know why also yet. All of a sudden in the human vow, the father is like, and to protect. He freezes. Raphael freezes because he's like, so the fae can't lie in this book. That is true. In this one, for the first time in human history, the fae actually can't lie. He like stutters and he doesn't say the to protect part. And then the dad is like, to protect. And again, because this isn't just like a formal verbal agreement, this is like a binding magic spell that they're doing right now, the marriage. Raphael goes, and to protect. And then as he said it, something changed, like within him, to the point where, because this is from Talia's POV, she literally says that something in his eyes changed and his whole like posture, something big just happened and she doesn't know what, because now he has sworn into this pact, this like magical pact, and if he fails in his magical pact, I guess the punishment in this world is just like death. So if she didn't marry him, she would die because she swore that she would marry him to him, and they struck a bargain. So the bargains are law. So now, how is he supposed to fix his curse without protecting her? He has to protect her. So they ride away really fast. Again, they're like racing against time, and we don't know why yet. As they're racing away, we get both POVs, and she's put onto her own horse, and he put her there, I believe. Anyways, they're having this like really cute back and forth thing where they're kind of like, oh, I like him kind of, but I don't think he likes me. She likes me, but I don't think like I like her, or I kind of like they're both kind of like, you know, it's very interesting. And then Raphael is thinking to himself like something changed after he had to say that vow, and now he doesn't know what to do because he actually has the desire to protect this tiny human woman, which he didn't before. Before, he was happy to use and abuse her. He actually has this desire to protect her and keep her safe and to cherish her. So that's obviously not ideal for him. All of a sudden, he's like, Hector's like, dude, you're out of time, you gotta go. And Raphael's like, I'll see you tonight. And then Raphael just dips, and we're like, where the fuck, where did Raphael go? And turns out he can't travel in the mortal lands during the daytime. Why can't he travel in the mortal lands during the daytime? Because he turns into a bear. And this is where I discovered that we're having a Beauty and the Beast retelling, but the original story. Because in the front of the book, it did say that this was a retelling of a like Spanish fairy tale, which I can't I'm not going to try to pronounce, but it is Beauty and the Beast, some kind of form of Beauty and the Beast, but definitely not the princess version. And we get a POV from him while he's in bear form, and he is killing people. Okay, he maims one man, he disembowels another. We find out later that these were the people at the festival. So he went to the festival where the horses were racing. Remember, her pact with Raphael was, you have to marry me and I'll give you a champion horse, because the other one was stolen. The horse wins. We discover the horse wins because he was there to see it, but he's also a huge bear, and he's killing a bunch of people and hurting a bunch of people. He's definitely not like a good guy, unless he can't control what he does. On her POV, while he's off disemboweling and killing people in bear form, gets to the tent, they get to the camp, and sees his tent. And again, think like a palace tent, like the kind you'd have to rent for like a wedding. Okay, beautiful on the inside and beautiful on the outside. Think like Narnia tent. And she gets in there and she's like, oh my god, all this is so nice. And then she kind of gets a little excited and she's like, wait, if this is how he camps, like I wonder what it'll be like when we actually get to the house. That's kind of cool. And she was getting really excited over these materialistic things. And then she finds this drawer of women's clothing, and she's like, oh, this is great, because she's, remember, still in her red, slit, torn, disgusting, dirty dress that she's been wearing for like a whole day and night, essentially. And then she's like, wait, there's a bunch of women's clothes in here. And so she like storms out of the tent, jealous, randomly. She's like to Hector, like, what are all these women clothes? And he's like, you're so silly. Did you not think that we wouldn't have magic to conjure you clothes? And she's like, what? And he's like, yeah, the second that you did those vows, remember, like, his stuff is your stuff and your stuff is his stuff. The tent just conjured you clothes that will fit you. And she's like, what? So she goes back in and she sees all these clothes are actually her size, including the riding boots. And she makes a very big point about this because she says that her dad always would make sure that she had the best riding boots, and they always were the specific kind that he liked, and those were the pairs that were in there. And she didn't get to bring anything from home, so this was kind of like a big deal. She was like, how does he know me? How does he know that I would want that? And she gets really excited, and then she draws herself a bath. She takes a bath. She does shove a table, though, in front of the tent so that she would hopefully know if someone was like going to enter. So she takes a bath. She uses the nice oils and the scents and everything, and then she slips into a nightgown and takes a nap. The afternoon siesta is what she says. We slip back into the POV of man Raphael, who is still a bear, and he gets back to the camp. It's like becoming dusk. It's like almost nighttime, and he's like huffing around as a huge bear, and his brother is like, dude, like, welcome back, and also you gotta take care of this. Like, you can still do this. Just because you got stuck saying you have to protect her, you know, you didn't say protect her from yourself, you just said protect her. And in his head, he's still a bear. He can't communicate, but he's like thinking to himself, you know, but I want to protect her. Like, he wants to protect her. And his brother's like, you could mean that you're protecting her from all the other horrible things in the world, you know, like, you're not technically telling a lie. And the bear Raphael did not really like that. And so what we learn is that he's tried to like woo a bunch of women throughout the years, the hundreds of years, and they have all discovered his bear form and ran for the hills. So he's deciding that he's going to hide his bear form from Talia, and I'm sure that will work out really well. We go back to Talia's POV, and she feels like she sees like a huge beast outside of the tent. She gets terrified. She's kind of hiding, and then all of a sudden it's called out that dinner's ready. So she's like, oh, I must have been imagining things, and then goes outside. They eat dinner, and then they get interrupted, and all of a sudden he gets all protective. Raphael gets so protective, and he's like, go to the tent now, he orders. And so she gets up, and she's like scrambling, like comic book scrambling and tripping, trying to get into the tent, and he ends up having to like sprint over to her and like pick her up to hide her, and he like essentially carefully chucks her into the tent, kind of. It doesn't work, and the wild hunt shows up, just one. Raphael commands the beast to stop, who he's riding, because he's riding a big wolf. He's riding a really big wolf. The wild hunt is riding a wolf, and the beast stops, and then the wild hunt guy falls off. Raphael tries to kill him, and Hector is like, leave, and then the guy just vanishes. And Talia is like screaming her head off during this entire time, like, during the time that he's fighting the wild hunt guy, she's like hiding, like covering half of her face with the tent, like, and she's screaming and she's so scared. He comes back over and he's like, are you okay? And she's like, what the fuck was that? And he's like, the wild hunt, we have to leave now, they'll come back and they won't be alone. So he like puts her on his horse, she's behind him on the horse, and they just go, and she's like, don't we need to pack all this stuff? And he's like, no, it'll just be where we need it to be next time. And so she's like, huh, that's kind of cool. And she's kind of like tentatively holding on to him, but he makes the horse go fast, like unrealistically magically fast. Okay, so she ends up having to hold on really tight, and Raphael thinks that that's really cute and sweet, and he lets himself kind of like sit in that feeling of this girl that he's sworn to protect, holding on to him, relying on him to keep her safe. And Hector says into his mind, he's like, you need to do this, you need to remember why you married her, don't let the magic of the vows confuse you. Even though Raphael knows that he has to sacrifice her, he's like, I'll just think about that later and I'll just enjoy how this feels. I do just want to say I really did like how to protect thing got thrown in there, because at first the book seemed kind of like easy and very simple and confusing, but then as soon as the to protect part got thrown in there, I was kind of hooked. I was like, oh, cool. As they're riding and Raphael is like, oh, it's kind of cute, she's like holding on to me, we get this part where she has to go through the door. They all have to go through the doors into the Fey world, and I guess it's painful, super painful, especially for mortals. So she's sitting behind him, holding on to him really tight, and again, he thinks that's really cute. He looks at Hector and Hector looks at Raphael, and they're like, okay, let's go. And Raphael's like, listen, do not open your eyes. Whatever you do, not open your fucking eyes, because what you're gonna see in there is so horrible and painful. And so they go in, and of course she opens her eyes. It's just nightmares. It's like a groundless existence that they're kind of like jumping through. They've jumped and they're just kind of like floating through it. And it's like her dead, like her in a yellow dress covered in blood, dead. Him seeing his brother, who is the one who cursed him, remember, being all evil and gross, and then the wild hunt is there, and she sees her dead parents hanging on nooses, or noosei, whatever the plural of that is, and it's just a bunch of nightmares. She's so scared that she almost lets go, and she kind of starts falling, and he like grabs her thigh to like hold her against him, because she's like kind of starting to fall off, and he's realizing that she's literally gonna pass out. So he quickly and carefully turns kind of like around in his seat, and he's like this huge, remember, we have to suspend our disbelief, okay? He turns around in his saddle and hooks his arms under her and then pulls her into his lap in the front. So now she's in front of him, nestled in. He's like cradling her, and she is like barely conscious. This is super painful and traumatizing for her as a mortal. And he's like, you have to stay with me. And he's thinking about how nice her hair smells. He's thinking about how perfect her head fits under his chin, and how she's such a delicate, precious little thing, just like a flower. And Hector again is like, you have to remember why we're doing this. Raphael just kind of doesn't say anything, and then Hector looks over at him again, because they're out of the portal now, and she's completely passed out, and they're in the Feylands now. The wild hunt is after them, and so is something else that we don't know yet. Hector looks over and says, can you outrun them with her like that? Raphael goes, the hunt or the Shadow Lord? Hector goes, either. Raphael pauses and doesn't say anything, and then Hector says, Raphael, the time is nearly up, you must do this. In 1,000 years, what will her life be to you? And Raphael swallows and says, if in 1,000 years I'm a free man, her life will have meant everything to me. So that's cute. It reminds me a lot of this anime and manga called Sugar Apple Fairytale, which I adore. I fucking love that shit. I eat it up. It's so good. So it reminds me of that, and so I'm kind of picturing him as Shelf on Shell. Yeah, I'm picturing him as Shelf and Shell, which is, just pretend that he is tan, because he's very pale. Hello, we're back. I am at page 127, and we are 43% of the way through the book. It's really good. I really like it. It's definitely like a kind of like a trash romance read, not like a smut, at least not yet. It's very like, it scratches every itch of like fae and human and like them falling in love and everything. So they get to his house. She describes it as being kind of like a weird honeycomb place, like there's bees everywhere and there's a blanket of petals that are kind of like browning around the edges. She kind of explores, and then she runs into one of his cousins, and her name is evidence. And she is really nice. She's really sweet. She shows Talia around the grounds and she's like, don't go over to that way because that's where the bad people are and they will want to hurt you. But the barn is safe and the racetrack is safe and the lake is safe and you can go all the way out there and have fun. Go have fun. She goes and finds a horse and she rides it away to the lake. She's just kind of hanging out there all day, I think, because the next POV is Raphael and he's talking to Hector in bear form, by the way, and Hector's like, hey, she's over by the lake and it's nighttime now and you want me to go get her because it's dangerous, you know. Bear form Raphael just kind of like huffs. This is where he starts to really have doubts about what he's doing, which is, you know, good because he's doing a bad thing. And he's like, he really doesn't know what to do because he's like, he's stuck. He's really stuck because she's gonna die no matter what at this point because of what he's done. Either his brother, who is evil, he seems to be the main antagonist of the book, even though we don't know much about him. His name is Fabian, evil name. And so either Fabian is gonna kill her because he's gonna find her and he wants to keep his brother ensnared in the curse because his brother, Raphael, is first in line to the throne. So if he's turned into a bear permanently forever, that benefits Fabian greatly. But also, if the curse is broken and he reclaims his place in the court, then she dies. And he doesn't want her to die anymore. He thinks she's cute and sweet. There's this really cute line. There was a couple really cute lines. So when we're in his POV, he has this cute thought and he said, Talia's screams still echoed in my head. And this is when they were like going through the thing. So he's like remembering them going through the gate. Talia's screams echoed in my head and I wanted to rip everything from the world that could cause her to ever make that sound again. It's so cute. And then we found out what the curse is. So Fabian had said that to break the curse, you must marry a mortal and make her fall in love with you. And only then, when she loves you in earnest, will your curse pour into her flesh, destroying her body and leaving yours whole. But mortals are prideful and fickle, and even more driven by looks than the fae. Who would fall in love with your hideous hide? That's what his brother said to him. That's kind of tough. They kind of got some family issues. The next day, Raphael rides out, now that he's a human, to the lake to go see Talia. He gets there and she's just really quiet and he startles her on accident and she almost falls off this rock that she was like watching. Like it's a big rock, like a boulder. And she's up there just kind of like looking around and he like strolls up with his horse and she's so startled she almost falls off and he like runs forward to catch her, but she catches her own balance. And so he's just kind of like standing there with his arms out and he's like, ah. She's like, hello. And he's like, you shouldn't be out here and you shouldn't be in the shadows. And he kind of like explains a little bit about the shadow court and how there are things that live in the shadows, but the light has magic and power, and so she should always try to be in the light, whether it's like the starlight, the sunlight, the moonlight, anything like that. But to hide in the shadows, especially at nighttime, bad. So she's like, ooh, that's terrifying. What monsters are out here? And he's like, they're closer than you think. And so he's trying to scare her now because he's like, I need to scare her so that she is terrified of me and of the woods and everything, and she just wants to leave and she won't have feelings for me. So he's trying to scare her and he's telling her scary stories about the things that lurk in the woods, and she keeps like inching closer to him because she's like scared of, you know, everything around, but she's like clearly missing what he's trying to scare her about, which is like himself and their property, like all of the spooky scary things that could be out there. Like they kind of come to a lull in the conversation and she's like, why did you marry me? And he's like, we have to get back to the house. And so then he mounts his horse and he rides off and she mounts her horse and she goes right after him. And then they have this cute scene from Talia's POV where they're racing each other. So they're racing each other back to the house in the middle of the night and she's having a really good time. She's like laughing. She keeps pulling ahead and then he keeps pulling ahead and he obviously beats her back to the house, but they both have this very cute moment together and they're not talking to each other. They're just racing and it's really cute. The next morning, she wakes up and she's going to start working as the assistant horse handler. So she's introduced to Javier, who is their horse, like main horse trainer underneath Raphael. He doesn't turn to look at her or anything, and he's like standing there with the horse attached to the reins, like running in this big circle. He just kind of like hands her the reins when she gets close. He doesn't even look at her, and he goes, tell me what you see. And so she like watches the horse do turns around the little corral a couple times, and then she's like, he's a free spirit and he's really fast, but he feels slowed by the fact that he's in the corral and he doesn't like running in a circle. And Javi is like, how did you know? that that's actually what the horse thought. And she goes, he told me. Because that's the only thing she could think to say, because in her human brain, like, she's like, he told me with his, you know, movements. And he goes, mortals can't speak to horses. And she's like, the Fae can? And he's like, yeah, like Javi just told me that he didn't speak to you. Or not Javi, the horse. I don't remember what the horse's name was that they were training, but he's like, he spoke to the horse that she had running in a circle. And he's like, I just talked to that horse and that horse did not talk to you. Oh, well, I just meant like with his movements, like I understand him well enough. And he really likes her. He likes her spunk. And so he's like, okay, I'm going to go. I have a meeting, but I'll see you back here frequently as the new assistant. And she's really excited about that. She can't stop herself from smiling because she understands horses. And then we don't see Raphael for 3 days. He's just kind of off somewhere doing something completely on his own. We don't get a POV or anything. Days pass and she's just alone at the house. She doesn't really know what to do. She's kind of just like wandering, kind of just like chilling and doing the horse stuff. She talks to Evidence. She has a lot of little conversations, and I'm definitely probably saying her name wrong. Let's see if I can't find a spot where it says. Okay, her name is Everence. And I did miss something. So after he had that conversation with his brother when he was in bear form a while ago, before he went and rode out to her at the lake, after he talked to his brother, and his brother was like, you have to do this. Like, you're gonna die. You deserve to live. Like, she's gonna die anyway, no matter what. And then right after that, he runs into Everence. She's trying to convince him not to do it. She's like, you need to stay away from her. You need to not have her like fall in love with you. You need to just like fuck off. Just return her. She doesn't deserve to die. And he's like, so I deserve to die then? Like, I deserve to be turned into a bear forever? And then eventually like losing my sanity and losing everything? And she's like, no. And he's like, see, like, what the fuck do I do? So he's just super stuck. Anyways, so he's gone for 3 days and they're having dinner, and then all of a sudden a bloody Raphael like storms in and then collapses on the floor in the house, and he's just bleeding all over the place. He's all torn up. Everence runs right over to him and she starts doing her healing magic thing, and right on Everence's tail running over to him is Talia, and she's over there and she's like, oh my gosh, and she's like trying to help in any way, but she's just like staring at him even though she knows that she shouldn't. And Hector is like annoyed that she's there, and he's like, get the frick away from Raphael. Everence is like, she can stay. Talia's like, I'm gonna stay. They heal him, and then all of a sudden, like, he's perfect, like, good as new and everything. She feels like kind of like a fly on the wall, and she's like, no, I'm gonna like insert myself. So she's like, are you okay? And he's basically like, no, but maybe I will be. And then he storms off for the night, like just all angsty. She also says that he lost too much blood, Everence. She's like, dude, you seriously lost a lot of blood. Oh, and then we find out he went back to the human world. So he was in the human world for 3 days. That's why we didn't see him. We also learn that when the Fae marry, they marry each other in order to share magic. So like when one Fae marries another Fae, they have access to each other's magic, and it becomes even stronger. And Everence was in the middle of telling Talia about what happens when a Fae marries a mortal, and then she's cut off because Raphael comes in and he's all bloody and everything. So there's something there with what happens, because she's feeling like she's getting magic, like she's having some access to magic, but she doesn't know what. She asked him to dine with them that night. He's like storming away, right? And she's like, will you eat with us? And he's like, no. So he just disappears. Next morning, Talia has a discussion with Everence, and she's just asking a bunch of questions about this dryad that like stormed off and just essentially like, quit her job. We know that the reason the dryad quit was because she saw Bear Raphael, and so she's like, dude, I'm out of here. But Everence obviously doesn't tell her that. She's like, I really want to see him. Like, I want to spend time with him. And Everence is like, well, tonight you can find him in the library. No place in this house is off limits to you. You can go wherever you want. Everything is yours. Go to the library tonight. And she's like, okay. So she goes to the library that night, and it's huge. I mean, think like almost picture that huge park that's like in New York City, okay? Like, not only is it multiple floors of library, like crazy library all over, but then right in the middle of the library is a grove of trees that just stretches farther than she can see, which is wild. So there must be some magic in this room that's making the room bigger on the inside. On the trees is a bunch of gashes, and on the floor is a bunch of gashes, and the floor down there is tiled with like grass and stone squares, so it's like checkerboarded with grass and stone, and there's just gashes on the stone, on the trees. And she's looking around, on the bottom floor, and then all of a sudden she snaps her head around because she hears Raphael say, "Who let you in here?" And she's like, ugh. And she's like, Everence told me that I could come here. And he goes, well, I guess since we're married, like, you do have access to everything, so you can be in here. She sees him look to the gashes and then look back at her, and he's like trying to start a conversation, but it's kind of awkward. They keep looking at each other, but they keep avoiding each other's gaze. Finally, she's like, why did you marry me? And I'm gonna read you some of these lines because this is really good. She points to the gouges that are everywhere, and she's like, what happened here? He says, monsters live here. But you'll keep me safe, won't you? Because she's trying to say something to like reach him. She's trying to say something significant because she hardly gets to see him, she hardly gets to talk to him. And so she's like trying to be cute. She's like, but you'll keep me safe, won't you? And he goes, that's my aim, yes. And then she's kind of just like staring at him. They're doing that weird eye contact thing again. And she goes, I haven't seen any monsters yet. And then he laughs super loudly because he's literally the monster that he's talking about. Like, she's like, I haven't seen any monsters, and she's literally talking to the monster. And he goes, I'm pleased to hear that too. And then he stopped and looks at her, and he goes, stars, Talia, what would you do if you ever did see a monster? And she just goes, say it again. And he goes, the curse. And she goes, my name. His body lurches forward and then stops as if he had to stop himself. He was just outside the grove of aspens, the light from the library illuminating him. I stood beneath the shadows of the trees. And she just goes, what is holding you back? Is it because I'm mortal? And he closes his eyes, and she steps forward. No, you should never have agreed to my bargain. And she goes, when we crossed through that awful gate, I heard Hector say that you were running out of time. And that's the crazy thing. We find out that she was awake when her and Hector were discussing him needing to like kill her, but they never said that. They never said that out loud. It was just like Hector being like, you're running out of time, and him being like, if I am still alive in 1,000 years, then her life will have meant everything to me. You know, she heard him say the really cute line. So that was really cool. You heard us? And she says, I heard you say that my life meant something to you, but you won't come near me. She steps forward again. Talia, he lifts a hand and like holds her arm so that she can't get any close. He's like arm barring her away from him. And he goes, you should go. At the end of the month, Hector will return you to your family. I would do it now, but I cannot break my vow. And she gasps and says, what? And he says, the reason I married you was foolish. I regret it now. My shoulders fell, and I clapped a hand over my still open mouth. Pain stabs my chest, and I choke out a sob. You're just like the rest of them. You don't want me. The drama. Raphael yells an angry note and storms toward me. Terrified, I stumbled backward until I bumped into a tree. And then this is the part where I'm talking like some of the movement doesn't make sense. It kind of seems like the characters teleport around here and there. It's not the best description, but she's startled by him because he like lets out this super frustrated like yell because he's trying to protect her, and she's like, you don't love me, you don't want me, no one wants me, I'm alone. And he's just like, ugh! And that startles her. She falls kind of like into a tree, like her back against it, and then he like storms towards her, and he does that thing where he like angles his head down, so he's literally, her head's here and his head's here, and he's like forehead to forehead almost, and then he like drops his voice kind of to like an angry whisper, and he goes, if I could change things, I would rewrite 300 years of my existence to prevent you from feeling this way. You deserve nothing but happiness, and I stole that from you. And then he kisses her on the forehead. Eee! And she goes, and I forgot all of my senseless words. I tilted my head back and forced my eyes to meet his. You fear I am not happy here? A tremor shook him. You must not be. Is that a command or a statement? And he's close enough to her now to kiss her. They're like literally like nose to nose. Her heart is like beating like crazy, and she's like, we're close enough to kiss, but he's gonna have to be the one to do that. I won't kiss him first. And she goes, I chose this. Like, I chose to do this. And he goes, you have no idea what you chose. And then he released, oh yeah, I forgot too. It's very weird. The writing is not clear. He apparently was holding her head, like he was like holding her chin or something, because it says that he released my face, but it never tells us that he was ever holding on to her face. So I guess he had like lifted his, done that like thing that everyone swoons over. Anyways, he's like, you have no idea what you chose. And then he lets her go and he storms away. And then we find out from Hector that Fabian, the evil brother, has sent someone from his court. And that is where I will leave you, and I will check back in when things have finished. But yeah, that was like a really cute moment because there's definitely some tension. They both like each other, but he's like, if I actually love her, I have to stay away from her, and she's like trying to get him to not stay away from her. Obviously, I feel like there's got to be another solution to her dying or him dying, unless it's not a happily ever after story, which it could be. It could be an unhappy ever after, I guess, but Anyways, I'll catch up with you in a bit.
Okay, so I'm checking in again and a lot has happened. So I gotta stop checking in so frequently. A lot has happened. Gosh, I don't even remember where I left off with you. What's his face showed up? The cousin, the brother. No. The courtier of Fabian, who is the brothers. Okay. He shows up and he's essentially like, I'm here to take away, why can't I ever remember her name? Talia. He's like, I'm here to take away Talia because the king, your brother, has ordered it. Raphael is like, my brother's not the king yet. And the guy, his name is really, really interesting. Let me try to find it. Sinsoria. His name is Sinsorius. We're just gonna call him Sin for short, okay? So Sin is like, he is as good as king, essentially. So he's like standing in front of Talia. Raphael is. He's super like, you know, big, tall, strong, fey dude in front of the itty bitty teeny tiny human girl. You're not gonna take my wife. She curls her fingers into his fingers and he has to like pull his hand away. She's like, she curls up into him because she's scared because the guy's like, I'm taking your wife. And he's like, you're not taking my wife. And he's like, I can do whatever I want actually because your brother told me that I could. And so she literally like laces her fingers with his. And he's like, and I wish she wouldn't do such enticing things. So poor guy. I mean, he's really in it. And he like shoves her behind him a little bit and he's like, you're literally not taking her. Sin pulls out this white whistle. Hector is there. Remember, he's the blonde one. And then the cousin girl, we're just gonna call her Eva from now on because I also really can't remember her name and I'm so sorry. All of them go like stark white. And he's like, if you don't do what I say, I'm gonna summon the wild hunt. And then there's not gonna be anything you can do. And he's like, you're not gonna do that. Or she's like, tell me what's going on. Like Talia, she's like, what is going on? Sin is like, I can tell you what's going on. And Raphael is like, you're not gonna say another word. You're just here to observe. Like, fine, I'll observe you both on the way to the sun court. And he just goes, he gets so mad. Raphael gets so mad. He's really unhappy. You know what? I would be too if I were stuck in such an impossible situation. We won't leave in any less than a week after the race. And that makes Talia really happy. She's like, oh my God, the race, yay. And he's like, okay, cool, I'll stay a week. And Raphael tells Sin, he's like, you're not gonna stay here a week. And he's like, I got the magic whistle, I can do whatever I want. They decide that they have to have dinner with him because otherwise he will summon the wild hunt. So they all go into the dining room and are served dinner. The topic of conversation between Sin and Raphael just keeps going back to Sin wanting to just talk about the curse that is on Raphael. And Raphael keeps being like, shut up. And then he eventually just like storms off. But he doesn't storm off before breaking the table. He's getting so frustrated. He like stands up super fast that his like chair falls over and he grips the oak wood table and it literally like he breaks off a chunk in his hands. Like he's so angry and then he storms off. And Talia is like, whoa, that was kind of hot. He just broke a table. That's pretty crazy that he's so strong. Wow.
Should I break tables?
Could you? Did you grip an oak table and break it? Oh, I missed a really important moment, you guys. I'm so sorry. Before the dinner, okay, we're back. Listen, I am new to doing these reading logs, okay? Raphael and Talia have a tender moment alone in the hallway because he leads her away from Sin because Sin is like, I got the magic scary whistle. And Raphael is like, fuck you. And he grabs Talia and he like ushers her away and then they have a conversation. And she's like, I have a right to know what's going on. And he's like, oh gosh, he says something really mean. He says, I made a mistake marrying you. You are not what I hoped for. Because he's trying to get her to hate him because even though he wants to be with her and she's trying so hard to get his like affection so she can like make the best of her life in the freaking Fae world, he's trying to push her away on purpose. So he's especially trying to anger her before dinner because he's like, okay, if Sin sees her being mad at me and me being cold towards her, then maybe he won't see her as a threat and he'll just leave. That was the goal. And so he tried to like push her away and so she's angry. And so he storms off right after breaking the table. And she like drinks her wine, Talia does, and she's like, wow, what a rude way to treat your guests. Is this what all Fae are like? And she's essentially like dissing Raphael, who's already left the room. After their dinner, she has this epic moment. She excuses herself. Sin has the audacity, okay? So are you gonna go be joining your husband now? You know, like wink, wink. And she says, you may be Fae, and I may be but a poor human, but no one from either world has ever said something as atrocious as what you have just said to me. And then she leaves. She's like, or inappropriate. Maybe it was like not atrocious, but inappropriate. Anyways, she basically she owns him, dude. She ratioed him hard. Gosh, I gotta read farther into this book before I update you guys again. It's just, there's so many little cute moments of Raphael wanting to like give in to his feelings for her, but then knowing that if he does that, she'll die. And she's trying so hard to get him, like to flirt with him and to get to know him, and he's trying so hard to not let her, and he has these little moments where he breaks, like the moments in the tree. They keep having these little moments, and they are clearly like inseparable. And I will wait to check in again, okay? I won't just update you every 4 pages. He decides and has told his brother Hector now. Raphael has told Hector, the blonde fae from the beginning. Remember, we remember Hector, okay? He has told Hector that he will not be letting her fall in love with him, and that he is going to let himself turn into a bear forever and lose everything for the sake of keeping Talia alive. I know I said that I would stop turning on the camera every couple pages, but I have to read this to you, okay? He's like, well, I said something so mean to her tonight anyway, so she'll never fall in love with me. And Hector's like, are you stupid? She's very much still in danger of falling in love with you. And then Hector tells him, you know, she's wandering around the house. Would you like me to go get her? And he's like, Raphael's like, what? What do you mean she's wandering? He's like, well, did you tell her how dangerous it would be? And he goes, I told her that there were monsters. And then in a jab, his brother Hector goes, you should have told them what they were. Because, you know, Raphael is the monster. And so they have a moment where they kind of like discuss what's going to happen if she gets taken. Hector's like, I'm just gonna go get her. I'm gonna go this way. And then Raphael's like, I'm going this way. And he jumps out into the garden to like the one place he thought that she would go, okay? He's like, where did they take her? Like, did he take her? And he's talking in his mind to all these animals that are around and to his horses. And he's like, where's Talia? Where's Talia? And they're all like, he took her. Yes, he took her. He said they were going home. Scary. What's home? Probably the Sun Court. Probably the bad place. He runs around to the front of the house and the carriage is still there, so they haven't left yet, okay? And he thinks that she's been spelled because she put up a fight at first, but then she gave in and I guess just went with him. That's what the animals told Raphael. So he walks around to the carriage and she's like clearly she's acting very drunk, essentially. It used this word ensorcelled, like sorceress, which I've never seen that word before. Ensorcelled, that was a crazy word. But she's been spelled essentially, and so she's acting drunk. Because she's not thinking clearly, essentially. So she's like all happy and giddy, and she's like, I want to pet the horses. And we hear Sin say, fine, you can pet the horses. And then just then he pulls up, okay? He storms up there and he walks right up to Talia and he's like, Talia, come with me. And she's like, I'm going home because Sin said that you were bad and scary and I just want to go home. Talia thinks that Sin is going to take her to her parents, but really he's going to take her to the Sun Court, okay? He walks around, Sin walks around, okay? I literally audibly gasped. And of course I wasn't recording myself sitting here reading because it's so dark. I was like, why would I do that? But I audibly gasped, okay? So he comes around the carriage, Sin comes around the carriage and he pauses momentarily. And then he goes to the chain at his neck, which has the whistle, okay? And it says, Sin slipped around the carriage and froze momentarily before his hand jerked to the chain at his neck. Before he could draw out the whistle, I hurled my dagger. It sank through the back of his hand and pinned his palm to his chest. It is so weird when books we go from like 0 to 100. Like we go from, oh, there's like this cute romance and like, oh, like they're kind of in danger, but you know, we're only being told about danger. We're not being shown danger. Oh my God, it's just so crazy. We see Raphael literally throw a knife at Sin and it goes through his hand into his chest and there's a knife. Oh, another thing is Talia's wearing a yellow gown right now. She wore a yellow gown to dinner. And in the Spectre image, when they were crossing through the gate, right, when we were seeing all of the horrors that weren't real, that their brains were showing them because it's just showing you a bunch of stuff that you're not supposed to really see. She's dead and wearing a yellow dress covered in blood. And she's wearing a yellow dress right now. So it's just a little nerve-wracking, okay? Howling in pain, he drops to his knees, Sin. Still grabbing for the chain with his free hand, I took 2 steps forward and kicked his hand away. The movement ripped the dagger from his chest and hand and slung his injured arm down. I pinned one knee to the courtier's chest and yanked off the chain. It slices into his skin, leaving a line. He pulled off his necklace so hard that it literally lacerated around his neck. This is so brutal out of nowhere. He tries to shove me off, but I slapped his hand down so hard that it hit his chin. My hand closes around the bone whistle, and with a firm yank, I broke the chain and stuffed the whistle into my pocket. Then I tore my dagger from his hand and pressed the tip under his chin. Hello, I am back with Kai to tell you about how the book ended, because I really, really did not like how it ended. I planned to keep talking to you guys during it. Hi. But then as I was going through it, we ended up having kind of a rough night last night. So he was just like, every time I'd sit down to film, he was either like crying or, you know, we just needed to give him our full attention. So he was sleeping, but I decided to hold him. This is your first camera appearance, dude. Anyways, where I left off with you was after the fight, where there's a lot more back and forth between Talia and Raphael of her trying to like figure out why he doesn't care about her, and him trying to prevent himself from falling in love with her by like separating himself from her. But eventually he caves and they kind of like have a moment where they kiss, and then he's like, uh-oh, I just killed her with that kiss, is what he told himself after they're really cute. And I just want to say, like, the writing during this part of the book is really, really good. Like, the relationship that Talia and Raphael have in the way that they talk to each other, I really enjoyed reading that. The day after he kisses her, he decides that he has to make her hate him. So he takes her to the town. He knows that everyone there hates him, and they will probably like be really cool to him, and, you know, cool like negative, like bad, cold towards him. So he's like, perfect, I'll just take her to the town and then she'll see how much everyone hates me and then she'll hate me. And they go there and she's just like a happy little girl the whole time. She's like looking around, she's like, whoa, all these cool things, all these cool people. There ends up being this like dance circle and she's like, dance with me. And he's like, I don't think we should do that. And then they went and they danced, and then at the end of the dance, they kiss, and during this time, they're supposed to be trying to convince Sin, the guy whose neck was lacerated open, that they hate each other, because if they can convince him that they hate each other, then he won't see her as a threat, and hopefully he won't take her to the Sun Palace, right? But they kiss again at the dance, and everyone is staring with like wide eyes, and Sin is like, oh, this is interesting, and he's just like randomly there. There was an artist and they painted the like finishing pose that Talia and Raphael did, except that Raphael was a bear, and she still doesn't know about the bear thing yet. Sin has like threatened to tell her like what it is multiple times in front of her, and so she knows that like something is wrong, but she doesn't know what. So the next day, during the daytime, because remember, all this other stuff happens at nighttime, she's out in the forest, just kind of like walking around. All of a sudden in the grass, oh, and this is from Raphael's perspective, he's watching her as a bear, as she's like going through the forest and everything, and his goal, I think, was to scare her. He was planning to jump out and scare her. But instead what happens is that he notices that through the grass, there is a dragon sneaking up on her, and the way that it described the dragon was really poor, so I have no idea if the dragon was like 80 feet long or if it was a teeny tiny little baby dragon or something, right? I guess I kind of imagined it when I was reading it as about the size of like a Great Dane, because for it to sneak through the grass, I kind of feel like it's gotta be really small. He sees the dragon sneaking up towards her, and he jumps out and he scares her, but he is able to chase the dragon away, and then he's just there and she's terrified, you know, of this bear, and then she like looks into his eyes And then she's like, Raphael? Everything clicks for her in this moment. She's like, that's why I never see him during the day, because he's a bear. And she's very confused. She's like, why? But then she smiles. Like, everything makes sense and that makes her happy. And she realizes that it's not that he was trying to get away from her every single day, it's that he was like trying to protect her. So then they really start to fall in love with each other, and they're kind of like open about it with each other. And then that's when she finds out that he originally brought her there to kill her. And that obviously throws a wrench in their love. Sin was like, I know you still want to kill her. And she's like, what do you mean? And Sin was like, you were originally brought here as a sacrificial lamb. And then like Raphael's just sitting there like he can't even get through words. Like he has no words. He just feels horrible. And she realizes that she's not safe and that everything that these people have been telling her, like they really wanted her to die this whole time and she's just been spun a bunch of lies. And so she gets on a horse and she rides away as fast as she can. Raphael is trying to ride after her, but she is on the fastest horse in the entire world, which this guy happens to just have. And she ends up riding to the other side of the property. She notices that there's just like a bunch of like kind of not demons but creatures around, and all of a sudden a huge cobra just like jumps out at her, knocks her off of her horse, and then starts attacking her. The cobra is taken down by a minotaur. Minotaur starts attacking her and he messes her up, dude, like really badly. Like he literally, it said that he stabbed his sword into her ribs and then pulled down, raking across each and slicing the ribs, among a bunch of other wounds that she got. And Raphael shows up and he saves her, and then they take her inside to try to heal her, but it ends up taking a really long time to heal her, but they've run out of time. They have to get to the Sun Court. After 2 days, she starts to feel a little bit better, but she's aching everywhere really, really badly, and she doesn't know why. And throughout the rest of their trip, which takes like a little bit to actually get to the Sun Court, we realize that her transition has already started and she's turning into a bear, which means that she does love him, and he realizes this and he just like loses it. He's so upset because he was trying to prevent it, kind of. I guess if he was really trying, he would have just really not been anywhere near her. And throughout all of this, Sin is like, you have to go to the Sun Court. You have to go to the Sun Court. And Raphael is just like, he does it. Like, he doesn't want to do it, but he's powerless to stop it, which I just hated, like, so much. And they realize that the only way to really save her at this point is for Raphael to take the crown instead of his brother, which we didn't even know was an option until now. And also, this entire book, okay, we've been told that if Talia turns into a bear, her frail human body will not survive the transition and she will die, okay? The entire book, that's what we're told. And I was waiting to see how they were gonna get around that, because Talia is obviously not gonna die, right? Unless it's not a happily ever after story. So I was waiting to see what they were gonna do. They get to the Sun Court and everything is like ridiculously ruthless. Like literally every single person there is like a devil. Not in terms of like appearance, but just every single person there wants to kill everyone else. And they want to kill Talia, and they keep trying to separate Talia and Raphael, and he's like, I'm not going to separate from her. And she's still like slowly turning into a bear. I think at this point she has claws now. Not paws, but just like claws. And this dryad is like taking them all the way upstairs, like, the king will see you now. He has to carry her because she's like literally dying because she's turning into a bear. I'm gonna kill anyone who ever makes her feel this way again. I'm gonna take the crown and like blah blah blah. We have this moment where they're put into 2 adjoining rooms, but there's like a magic wall that divides them. And she starts having seizures because of how how her body's reacting to turning into a bear. And so at one point she literally like falls down, but she hits her head on the way down and then blacks out and like has a full seizure like on the ground. And he's like trying to save her and get through the magic barrier, but he can't. So instead he breaks a hole through the wall because his power is coming back. Why? Because his curse is going into her and so therefore he's getting his energy and his power back. He is unsuccessful in saving her. She just seizes a bunch, and then they get separated, and a bag is put over Raphael's head, and he disappears. Talia kind of like blacks out. They make her wear this like blue dress, I guess, and they said that if she displeases the king with her appearance, he's just gonna cut off her hands. And there's like a lot, they say that stuff like a lot, like, oh, if you displease the current sovereign, like he'll cut your ear off, or he'll do this, or he'll have someone else do this, he'll torture you and make everyone else watch, you know, like very, very evil guy. Like evil, and for what? We don't have any motivation for him. So they take her into this big ballroom, and they put her just like in the center of the room, and everyone is like looking at her like they want to kill her, but they're not actually doing anything about it. The dryad who's walking them in there, she asks, she's like, why isn't anybody talking? And the dryad said that if anybody talks before the king gets there, he will cut out their tongue. What? Literally why? And also they were talking, but I guess they had already decided that they were gonna kill her. I don't know. And Raphael is dragged in with the bag on his head, and as he's dragged in, this like pillar of starlight and shadows comes down from the sky, and the current sovereign, who is his brother Fabian, descends from the sky. You fools! I'm gonna kill you, and I'm gonna torture her and make you watch. Raphael's like, I'm gonna kill you and take the crown. And he's like, haha, for your insolence, we're gonna torture you. And then listen to how they torture, okay? He's like, we're gonna play a game. Every single person is going to do this dance, and if anybody messes up one step at all, you're allowed to attack them, essentially. So everyone is gonna be doing these dances, and if they miss a step, then they're open to being attacked for every single step that they miss. And Talia's like, I don't know the dance. And Raphael's like, I'll protect you, just follow my lead. And again, she's still like seizing here and there because she's turning into a bear. And everyone starts like doing the waltz. And in my head, I pictured a bunch of people just kind of like twirling around like in the air. She obviously messes up some steps, not before some other people do and are killed. So she messes up some steps, and then obviously Raphael is defending her against all of these people. And then this is where everything got really, really, really confusing for me. Raphael, I think, gets taken down, and he is watching her turn into a bear. So she like, it says that his wife, like the line literally said his wife was dead, because she like, her transition was completed. He watched her body like shred and turn into a bear, and her face elongate and everything. Like she was a bear, and she's just lying there, and he's helpless, also lying there because he's been injured. And then on the next page, it's like, psych, actually she's alive. And so it's like the entire time the only stakes of this book has been, if we don't save Talia and Talia transforms, she's gonna die. So we have to find a way around that. Well, guess what? She just didn't die, and that was the way around it, and that was what really disappointed me. And then after that, Raphael easily kills Fabian. Like, I mean, there was no fight there. Like, as a bear, Talia kicks the knife with iron over to Raphael, and then he just plunges it into Fabian, and then Fabian dies. Everyone is like, well, what are we gonna do? We don't have a sovereign. I will be sovereign, except that I don't want the throne, so my cousin is going to be the sovereign. Remember, Everence? She becomes the sovereign. So you know how the curse affects them every single day, right? Every single day he turned into a bear, and at night he was a person. And so she was like, I want to love you forever, even if it's only at night, which they made up, by the way. Like, they were very in love with each other. And she wanted to take the curse from him. Like, she was, at the end of it, she like wanted to and was happy to, and he wanted to take it back from her. Yeah, she doesn't turn into a bear every day. It was just that one time. And it doesn't give us a reason why. I assume the reason is unspoken, and it's that Fabian was killed and he was the person who wrote the curse, and so therefore because he's dead, the curse just goes away. But if that's the case, then like, why wasn't Raphael just trying to kill his brother for the last 200 years? Why was he going after like mortal women, trying to convince them to fall in love with him so that he could kill them? They live happily ever after, and she never turns into a bear again, and it ends with them walking back to the house, and they're like happy and together. Oh, and get this. So you know how in these books with fantasy, it's always interesting to see what's gonna happen when you have like a mortal woman and a man who can live forever. It's like, well, how is that gonna get resolved, right? How is how is the girl gonna get the ability to live forever and ever, right? Listen to this. So in this world, right, the reason why the curse gets also spread to Talia is because when the Fae marry in this world, they share everything, including weaknesses. And so Raphael, he shares part of her mortality, which actually I thought was really cool. So instead of her just inheriting his like immortality, he inherits mortality, but it's still like hundreds of years in the future. Like probably like, what did they say? They said like 1,000 years or something. And she inherits that same lifespan. So she is not immortal, but she pretty much is, because she's gonna live forever and ever. So that also happens. It's just very confusing. Like the beginning of the book, very rushed and confusing. The end of the book, very rushed and confusing. Everything in between, I ate it up. Oh my god, it was delicious. I ate it up. I loved it. I absolutely adored it. The ending was completely butchered. I hope that the next time I do this, I end up liking the end of the book. This is, I think, other than Lightlark and the book that came after that, what was it, Nightshade or something? This is the first time I think I've been disappointed by the end of a book that I actually enjoyed reading. Thanks for doing the reading vlog with me. I hope you liked it. I will figure out how to probably do these better. I feel like this video is going to be really long, but anyways, Kai and I say goodbye.